Hi guys, my name is Isra and welcome if you're new to my channel where I share about beauty DIYs, my own spiritual and health journey, as well as how to nourish your body. Today I'm going to share about my own spiritual awakening experience. I had been a very aware child growing up, but I grew up in a family that was very conservative, and it was hard for me to be me. It felt like to be loved was a conditional situation where it's like, to be loved, you need to follow what we believe in. Fast forward, I wore the hijab when I was 10 years old. I wore it out of my own choice because I believed that if I wore the hijab that I would be closer to God, I would be more spiritual, and I would be of that good girl archetype. And I made sure that I followed that archetype to the T. But with that, I was giving my power away to beliefs and things that were not in alignment with my own true soul's path. And I lost what it meant for me to have joy, or the understanding of what my heart desires. And so when people would ask me, like, what's your opinion about this, or what do you like, or what makes you have fun, what gives you the sense of joy, I didn't know how to answer that. I felt this hollowness, this emptiness inside. And I lost a sense of confidence within myself. I felt distant from who I truly am. In that place of being so far from myself, it felt so deeply painful, so deeply saddening to be in that place. But when you're living with your parents, or when you're living with someone and they don't accept you for you, it's hard to really step forward into that path, especially when there's a lot of shaming that goes on. And I've always been a very sensual person. I've always been a person who wanted to embody this feminine energy of my own way of embodying it, because feminine energy is not one path or one way of expressing it. There are multiple ways to express what feminine energy is. Fast forward to when I turned 19. My parents decided to give my brothers and I a choice to stay in Canada or to go with them back to Lebanon. And of course, I chose to stay here in Canada. And that's when I started to wake up, to realize how far and how numb I was. It was really hard to face that. So I would distract myself. I would constantly be outside, always active. I had 2-3 jobs at some point. I was constantly part of different club activities at the University of Ottawa. As someone who was wearing the hijab, I did not speak to guys. I didn't listen to music. I didn't even shake hands with men. I completely was following the religion and made sure, again, I was the good girl. It was hard for me to break out of that. And there are still layers where I am breaking out of that. Following what feels right for me, what my heart desires, and understanding what my heart truly desires, because that's a journey that a lot of us have lost touch with, where the mind, where the ego tries to be in the driver's seat. But we need to allow the heart to guide us, to allow the heart to be the voice that is there. For many of us, that voice has become so silent that we have lost touch with what brings us excitement, what brings us happiness and joy. We've numbed ourselves to the point where we don't know where to start to return back to the heart. What changed it all for me was Japan. My heart had always told me Japan. The only thing that I could remember, it was watching anime, reading manga, and the desire to go to Japan. And when I turned 23, I was hit with pretty severe depression. I won't go into detail, but I had to be taken care of by my uncle's family since my parents were not here. for a couple of weeks, and I'm so grateful that they did, because when you go through depression, it's so difficult to do anything, to make food, to get out of bed, to literally just do the smallest of things. Brushing my teeth or anything like that, I just didn't do any of it. I just stopped talking and moving. And it was a very, very, very hard thing, very difficult thing. Every day waking up, it was very hard. I started to ask myself these big questions. What does my heart desire? What do I really want to do? What is it that I've been putting aside that I should just do now, that I've been like postponing? And it was traveling to Japan, as well as martial arts. I have such a deep love for martial arts, so I took up Taekwondo. It was hard for me again to do that, to do Taekwondo, because it's not easy for me to do things in general. The sense of motivation in doing was difficult. And I started to also apply to go to Japan through the JET program, which is a well-known program to teach English in Japan as a second language. And it was a very competitive program, but I was able to get in because I put my heart and soul into this. I pushed and I was like, it's gonna happen. No matter what, I'm going to go to Japan. And I still was wearing the hijab at this time, then got accepted to go to Japan. It never stopped me, by the way, that I wore the hijab. I always followed and did what my heart desired. Even though I was disconnected, but there was still that internal compass that connected me to a certain degree. And it's all in layers. As we connect back to ourselves and as we release the subconscious beliefs that are limiting us from following our heart, it's all in layers. And so I started the process of really removing those layers that were not serving me in Japan. So August 4th, 2014, I went to Japan and I was ecstatic. I was so happy that I was choosing this and that I was gonna go to Japan and live there long term. And 3 weeks into Japan, and if you asked me a week before if I was going to take off the hijab, I would have said there's no way. 3 weeks in, August 27, 2014, something switched in me. And this was something that was coming through for quite some time, realizing how what I was wearing, what I was placing on my head, wasn't a reflection of me, wasn't a reflection of who I am. So when I got to Japan, I met this guy from the US. After a couple deep conversations, he told me, like, I noticed that you're not happy wearing the hijab, and here in Japan, no one knows you. You can just take it off, feel into how it is for you having the hijab off, and then put it back on if you don't feel comfortable. So I did that, took that choice, August 27. I've never looked back since then. I feel like I took the step towards myself. But with that, I had a lot of fear. I felt the fear of persecution. And I think this is to do, whether you believe in past lives or not, to do with a past life where I was persecuted for following what I believed in and not following what the culture or society around me wanted me to do. So that was a very difficult thing. I didn't tell my parents for like a year and a half. I didn't tell them. With that, I started to also, I stopped praying in the way that was not feeling in alignment with me. I did go to the opposite spectrum in the sense of like having a very strong dislike towards religion, but I noticed that there's a beauty to the hijab, there's a beauty to every religion. It's really according to where you're at in your path. Some belief systems absolutely are integral and so important for that person. But for me, it was not helping me. It was actually taking me from myself, from my own true divine feminine expression. There was 2 major things that happened in Japan. Many different things happened, but 2 major things was August 2015, and a month prior to that, I was told you will start awakening very quickly. This was through my intuition, maybe my spirit guides. I didn't understand what was going on really at the time, but I became very sensitive. I started experiencing a lot of different symptoms where I thought I was going crazy and I was gonna die soon. So I had already anxiety issues, and this made it way worse. So yeah, and I was told to leave Japan in September or October of 2015. And I was like, I can't. I already signed a contract. So I went against myself because I had signed a contract. November 2015 changed my life. I went on a trip with a friend and I had fainted because of dehydration. I was at a hot spring. I loved going to hot springs, and everything changed after that. I wasn't able to take normal showers after that. And this was all part of me reawakening more into myself. Because why did this situation happen? Because I went against myself, because I was not honoring my value, honoring myself. These health crises happen in order for us to awaken more into being present in our body, to honor our emotions, to honor our physical body as a vessel. And sometimes, you know, the universe will give you signs, it will guide you, but sometimes we're so disconnected that we don't understand the message, or we don't even recognize that it is a message, and we deny that we even have a spiritual connection. So this was another layer. And 2016 was such a difficult time for me in reclaiming my power, because I didn't understand, I didn't have any guidance, and the physical symptoms continued. And I'll talk about this in another video to do with how I overcame this issue. I had chronic dehydration after that. I had stomach issues, depression, anxiety, and this all related to my gut issues, all related to feeling safe in my body. I was constantly in the fight or flight response. All connected to the childhood, because your childhood really does form your adulthood unless you unlearn certain things, unless you go back to those traumas and give love to your inner child, and to hold yourself, to love yourself, to reparent yourself, to give yourself love in the way that your parents could not or did not know how to. So this is a process, and it has been a process. I feel such a greater power in my heart after the experience in Japan, after this constant inner work that I've been doing. And part of awakening is that it's not all happy times. It's really a lot of shadow work, a lot of maybe dark nights of the soul, which I went through many of them. And to have a support system, to have people around you, has been the most integral thing. To talk about what you're going through in a non-judgmental atmosphere or environment is so important in facilitating the healing, in bringing the understanding of what compassion is towards you. Because growing up, if we don't have a reference point to what compassion is, then how will we know? This has been truly a process for me. I chose myself over and over again, and I learned how to do that. And of course, there was a lot of trial and error where I was like, oh man, it feels like I've taken like 20 steps back. But truthfully, on the spiritual journey, it is not a linear kind of path. It is ups and downs where you are creating greater self-mastery into those lessons when you feel like they're 20 or 30 steps back. It is truly greater inner self-mastery. So I hope you enjoyed this video about my awakening experience. And if you have any questions or would like a certain video to be made, feel free to comment below, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.